Launching a brand new game console has never been easy for hardware manufacturers, but I think we can all agree things have been especially nuts for Nintendo Switch 2. As I'm recording this was supposed to be the day when we were all getting our pre-orders in Canada and the United States for the Nintendo Switch 2. It's been a week since they unveiled a whole bunch of stuff with the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, but of course we know that there is a delay on being able to pre-order these consoles thanks to a trade war that the US administration has initiated with the entire world, and so there is massive upheaval and a lot of questions and concerns about when we are actually going to be able to get this console and also how much it's going to cost. And as I started to kind of track down some information for this video, I thought, okay, you know what? There are just a bunch of little info tidbits out there. I thought, why don't I just collect 10 things that I have learned about the Nintendo Switch 2 for you guys. Let's get started with number 10. There are a bunch of Nintendo Switch 1 games that are having compatibility issues currently with Nintendo Switch 2, but the good news is that Nintendo is on the case, and when you look at that list of Nintendo Switch 1s that are having issues on Nintendo Switch 2, it's not that big. You've noticed that first of all, and a lot of them have to do with emulation. There are old retro games that have been emulated to work on Nintendo Switch 1, and some of them may be having some issues on Nintendo Switch 2. I think a lot of this stuff is going to get resolved between Nintendo and all of their partners, and this won't be an issue at all. I was actually pleasantly surprised to see that there aren't that many Switch 1 games that are going to have a problem on Switch 2. Number 9, Switch 1 enhanced games that have been enhanced for Nintendo Switch 2. It looks like the physical editions of those games will be the Nintendo Switch 1 cartridge, and you'll get a download code to get all of the enhancements. And of course, you can buy that enhancement download code separately if you own the game digitally, or if you own the Nintendo Switch 1 cartridge already, you can buy the enhancement upgrade. And this is still not 100% with me. I haven't had a chance to sit down with Nintendo spokespeople. I haven't had hands-on time with Nintendo Switch 2 yet. VGC reports, based on wording on the Metroid Prime 4 Beyond box, it says it includes the Nintendo Switch game and a Nintendo Switch 2 Edition upgrade pack. Upgrade pack also available separately. And that's kind of a huge bummer. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond for Switch 2, which hasn't even launched yet on Nintendo Switch 1, should be its own separate cart, and it should all be included on the cartridge. Number 8 is that dock mode for Nintendo Switch 2 will support up to 1440p at 120 frames per second, which is pretty cool. We already knew it was 4K 60 frames per second on television and 120 frames per second at 1080p on the new Nintendo Switch 2 screen in handheld mode, and both of those stats are incredible, but the fact that you can actually, if you have a monitor that will display at 1440p, some games will run 1440p at 120 frames per second when the Switch 2 is docked. This is a pretty powerful machine thanks to NVIDIA's partnership with Nintendo and their custom chip, as well as DLSS technology, which is just continuing to improve. Number 7 is that the price of the Nintendo Switch World Tour game is $10 US, and Nintendo's Bill Trinan spoke with IGN about that price tag, and in their story they said Trinan said there's more to Welcome Tour than it appears based on the showing during the Nintendo Direct and even during recent hands-on opportunities the media had access to. Based on what's actually in the game, Nintendo decided that $9.99 is not an exorbitant price, he continued. So hopefully there are some cool surprises in there. I think we can all agree that it's kind of silly that a tour of your console is something that you have to pay for, but hopefully Nintendo shocks us with some incredible hidden gems in that software to make that price worth it. Are you guys going to buy Nintendo Switch 2 World Tour when it comes out with the console? Or are you saying, nah, I'm going to wait for reviews, or I'm just going to watch it on YouTube or something like that? Let me know in the comments below. Number 6, and this is a really cool one for me to remember because the Nintendo GameCube actually had 16:9 widescreen support for some games, and as we're seeing with F-Zero GX, that's going to run in widescreen when we get it on our Nintendo Switch 2s, which I cannot wait to re-experience. It's going to be amazing. That is a beautiful, super fast-paced game. But there are other 16:9 games, I dug into this a little bit, that I hope will be coming to the GameCube Nintendo Classics lineup that they're putting on Nintendo Switch 2. I'm thinking Eternal Darkness would be incredible, Call of Duty Big Red One, which was a real emphasis on the storytelling that they put into that game, which would be great. Beyond Good and Evil, I don't know if Ubisoft would do that because they've done enhanced versions of that game. But if they do the original GameCube title on Nintendo Switch 2, it would be pretty rad, and it would run in widescreen, which is great. Dragon's Lair 3D, which, if I recall, was a pretty damn fun game that surprised both Tommy and I when we reviewed it back in the day. Gun would be rad. Time Splitters Future Perfect, yes please. And I don't know if this would ever happen because of all of the music licensing and everything, but if they did SSX3 in widescreen on the Nintendo Switch 2, I would go crazy for that. I love that freaking game. Number 5, after watching a hands-on video from Kinda Funny's Tim Geddes and Blessing Adeoye Jr., I've learned that Mario Kart World is a little slower feeling because of the wider tracks to accommodate all of the different racers that you're going to be challenged by as you're playing the game.
One other thing I'll say is that it felt very slow. At times I was just like, is this 50cc? And I think it's the combination of a couple factors. One, the wider maps, I think just make everything feel like you're moving a lot slower through them, because I feel like the linear ones, it feels like you're getting further distance just visually. But in addition to that, I did confirm we were playing in 100cc mode. So while it wasn't as slow as I might have thought, we're so used to 150.
We are.
And what Tim had to say is that it felt a little slower because of the expanse of it, but it is incredibly satisfying. I am so hyped for this game. I already was, but then I watched that video and just to see the elation in their eyes. But I was a bit surprised to learn that in places Mario Kart World is going to feel a little bit slower because you have so much world to explore in this freaking game. I can't wait to dive in. I am so damn excited. I think this game is going to be marvelous. And speaking of Mario Kart World, prices for Nintendo Switch 2 games are going to be variable. Mario Kart World is currently priced at $80 in the States. They haven't announced officially the Canadian pricing, but presumably it's going to be about $110 Canadian. And then there are other AAA games published by Nintendo and their partners that are going to be around that $70 US mark, which will translate to $100 Canadian. And so yes, we are seeing a bump up in pricing, and that is a very scary idea because games were already expensive and now they're going to be a little bit more expensive, and presumably this sort of opens the door for other publishers and other partners to start bumping up their prices as well. Bill Trinan also in an interview with IGN had this to say: I would say it's less about the strategy of pricing Mario Kart World. It's more just whenever we look at a given game, we just look at what is the experience and what's the content and what's the value. And so it looks like Nintendo and presumably partners are going to be looking at the expense to put a game together and the amount of content coming from that game, and they're going to price according to their ideas of what it should be priced at. And of course, we're all thinking about Grand Theft Auto 6, which I think will also be playable on Nintendo Switch 2. You know, I think they're going to figure out a way to reach that install base as well. But pricing for Grand Theft Auto 6 will probably be very close to $100 US, and that's going to be a very, very expensive price for Canada. Personally, I think pricing games this high is exclusionary. I think it really makes it a tough sell for people that are into games but don't have the time or money to sort of follow along on a regular cadence. I think that's going to interrupt a lot of people's plans to consume this stuff more regularly. I think it's a very dangerous idea to get games priced that high. And yes, I know based on inflation, games from the 80s and the 90s would be over $100 now, but the thing that I always think back on is that games back then were total magic and total mystery. We had no idea how they came out. They were brand new, and companies were figuring out how to price these things, and also the install base was minuscule compared to where we are now, and the awareness around games where we are now. I mean, look at the box office on the Minecraft movie. And I think the road to mass adoption and frankly more interesting game ideas is to price these games in an affordable zone so more and more people hop on. And I think what's happening now is that games are going to be construed as even more of a luxury item, and it's going to be a lot more education to get people to be enthusiastic about spending that amount of money, especially in these economic times. Number 3 is that some games are going to be on the Nintendo Switch 2 card. I'm talking about Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive games. They're going to fit all on the little card that you can pop into the console, so if you're buying the physical. But some will be digital key cards, meaning the key to unlock the game is on that card, and it has to be installed into your machine, but you will download all of the data to play the game, and that's presumably because the game is so large, it won't fit on these new cards. That's disconcerting, but the one thing about this is that it's not a download code that you can only attach to your account. It is attached to the card. So you can sell that and you can share that, and it will download everything from the service. So it's not ideal. The best is if you buy a physical game, you have it all included on the piece of media that you have it on. But that is becoming a very rare thing these days for all the consoles. And so I think this is a pretty good middle ground that Nintendo's created here. And it doesn't look like every game is going to go that route. I think a lot of games will include everything on the cartridge. But, you know, patches and DLC, you'll still have to download. Number 2, we learned that Canadian pre-orders are based on whatever the US is up to. And we had a moment there where it looked like Canadian pre-orders were still going forward. And then Mobile Syrup, based on great reporting from Brad Shankar, revealed that nope, Canadian pre-orders have also been delayed. And this is all to do with the tariffs and the trade war that Donald Trump and his administration has started. And that's a real drag. It's a real bummer because presumably whatever Nintendo decides to do pricing and rollout in the US is going to directly affect how consumers in Canada are going to have access to this machine. And already based on the exchange rate, it's a pretty big number. So if the tariffs force the price of the Nintendo Switch 2 to go up in the States, and then it's reflected in the Canadian pricing, that's going to be bad news. I mean, that's just going to be terrible news. And number 1, and I found this to be very interesting, is that Doug Bowser, the president of Nintendo of America, was interviewed by The Verge, and he said that the price that we all learned about, that $449 US, $629 Canadian price for Nintendo Switch 2 was not influenced by the tariffs or any of the trade war sort of murmurs or anything like that. And of course, that Liberation Day that Donald Trump was talking about happened on the same day that the Nintendo Switch 2 was revealed. And then subsequently, we've learned about more tariffs and bigger frustrations and concerns and hysteria around this trade war since then. And so the pre-orders have been delayed. But I was surprised that Doug Bowser said that no, that pricing had nothing to do with the tariffs. Now, that might just be a story for the media and not wanting to sort of dip their toe into all this quagmire here. And who knows if these international tariffs are going to have any kind of influence on what the eventual end price for these launch systems are going to be, and who knows if Nintendo has a big quantity of machines in North America right now that they can sell at these prices, and then subsequent waves of Nintendo Switch 2s are going to have to go up based on tariffs. It's a very messy time. It is crazy. I feel for everybody that's actually working at Nintendo that just wanted to surprise and delight us all with this machine and get us all happy and, stoked to jump into these new games. I mean, there's no denying there is some incredible technology, and these games that they've previewed look absolutely phenomenal. I'm going to get hands-on time. I can't wait to report on my experience with Nintendo Switch 2. I can't wait to get this system and start reviewing these games for you, start talking with the developers that are making all of these things. But for now, we're in a holding pattern. But let me know your thoughts. What are some things that you have learned about Nintendo Switch 2? Are you still psyched? Are you planning on getting one? Are you a little dismayed at current events? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for hitting that subscribe button and that little bell. Thanks for being here and watching this and sharing this video. We will see you soon. And until then, play forever.